Hey, shalom, shalom. Your brother Raza Allah from GMS London Camp. First and foremost, want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruchakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone. Blessings to the hopeful and sincere elect around the four winds of the earth. Bahayakodash, the holy elect, Baha Raza. Greetings, man. Around the four winds of the earth, as I just said. Quick one, just seeing this headline from the rapper Akon, and he breaks down basically monogamy is a thing of the West, a trait for the so-called white man pushed on our people, the tribes, and mainly around the whole world. All this monogamous relationship of one man, one wife, happy wife, happy life, BS type rhetoric. And in fact, going into the ancient world from the beginning of time, men dealt with a variety of women because they had the option to, man. Because why? Because the Heavenly Father created a woman to be a helpmeet, Eve, and for a man to, be fruitful and multiply, as the scripture says. That's a blessing. That's an actual commandment from the Heavenly Father. They call ignorantly call God. His name in the Hebrew is Yahweh, and his only begotten son's name is Yahweh Shai, who they ignorantly call JC or Christ. You know, the commandment is that a man should be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and that's not just through one man having one wife, man. That means a man has to have a variety, sport for choice, so to speak, pick of the litter, and that type of man. That's what you call polygamy, and that teaching or that edict is going to be in full steam ahead in these last days, especially coming into the time of Jacob's trouble, which we're currently in, but it's going to escalate. Coming to the end of this society, and as it stands, and definitely going into the kingdom of heaven. A man's going to be able to have many multiple wives, including concubines of the other nations, man, which will be like a secondary wife, a lower wife, second class citizen, if you will. So yeah, Akon basically has the same right mindset that over here in the West, pushed by the so-called white man, the devil that the Bible speaks of, that they push this monogamous having only one partner type relationship. But outside of the West, especially over there in the Middle Eastern countries and Arab land and all of that, they practice a man having multiple wives, and there's basically no transgression being committed. It's not a sin according to the Bible for a man to have many wives. It's only a sin if a man sleeps with another man's wife, because that's another man's piece of property right there. See, that's like basically stealing someone else's property. That's a transgression. That's a sin unto death, basically, and it's called adultery. So, but if the woman's not betrothed to anyone else, not promised to another man, she's so-called single, damsel in distress, and a man wants to marry her, let them marry, man. And if he finds another maid that's willing to, fit the bill and do her duties as another wife, as it tells you in Exodus, was it Exodus 21:10, if I'm not mistaken, and she meets the three stipulations to provide as being a wife unto the husband, then he can marry her as well, as long as he provides and she provides her part of the deal, the contract, of maintaining the marriage, as it says in the book of Exodus, man. So yeah, man, Akon's got the right mindset, and he's an Israelite anyway. He's from the continent of Africa. What is it? It's not Congolese, I think. Where is he from? Is it Senegal or one of them places? Can't remember right now, but I know it's predominantly West Africa that he's from anyway. Not Nigeria or Ghana, I know that. But he's an Israelite anyway, and he knows, the spirit of a man is to have multiple wives, man. There's nothing wrong with that. So rapper Akon breaks down why he believes women cannot have multiple partners. Yeah, a woman's not supposed to have multiple partners. That's what you call, adultery, and that's wickedness, because that breeds, STIs or STDs, man. Sexual, transmitted diseases or infections. When a woman's dealing with multiple men, got multiple sperm cells in her stomach and all of that, that's nastiness, man. That's called confusion. A lot of women that live by that, that edict nowadays, that's why they don't know who the baby daddy is, when they're, about to conceive and bring forth a child. They've slept with so many different partners, they don't know who the father is, you know, because there's a multitude of semen in her fucking womb, man. And that's nastiness, man. And that creates all kinds of diseases and inflammations, and it's just wicked. It's a wicked deal, man. It's not. There's nothing righteous about that. But if a woman is one of the husband, a wife to a husband that has many other wives, there's less chance of STIs being transmitted because they're all dealing with that one man. So he believes he believes women cannot have multiple partners. No, women cannot be polygamous. Only the man can be polygamous. He says, but a man can, yeah. Says it's only twisted in America, where women feel like they're equal to men. And whose fault is that? You create with this with feminism and BS doctrine of women being equal to man and having rights and liberty to gather abroad and all that. It's the so-called white man, the devil that the Bible speaks of. He's the one that gave them, these women, so-called freedom, to surpass a man, like the scripture tells you, man, or be equal to a man. That's why these women be screaming out for equality, but yet and still it's been proven as a biological fact that men are far better than women in every field, whether it be physical or mentally or spiritual, man, but mainly physical and mental, because women deal with emotions, men deal with logic, reasoning and all of that. Women don't deal with reasoning, they just deal with emotions. And physically, there's no contest. A man is far more stronger, faster, more durable than a woman can ever be, because they deal with estrogen and the men deal with testosterone, which is, only found in men. So the men are far capable and more better in on all levels, everything basically. Even when it comes to minding children, men are far better capable fathers than women being mothers, because the women are just, as I said, they're built with emotions, man. So they don't know how to raise a boy into a man. They can raise a girl into a woman if they're, got the right tutelage, not turn their daughters into a bunch of whores and harlots and sluts, but nowadays that's usually the case. But these women don't even know how to raise their daughters nowadays, man. They don't even want to cook and clean. So this everything's upside down and inside out, because the wicked is in rulership, man, and they don't attain to the covenants of the law, statutes, and judgments of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, and that's why the earth is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, man. Everyone's minds is corrupted because the wicked beareth rule. So Akon, he's got the right mentality. A man is supposed to have more than one wife, and that's going to be happening more and more as we get into the time, coming to the time of Jacob's trouble, and definitely going to happen in the Lord's kingdom. Yahweh Shai's kingdom when he comes back, because even the Lord himself related the kingdom of heaven to a man having 10 virgins, man. If it was illegal for a man to have multiple wives, why would the Lord, associate a man in the kingdom of heaven liken unto a man having 10 women, 10 virgins? And then you got the analogy of 5 being wise and 5 being foolish, but yet and still the Lord compared a man in the kingdom of heaven living the life, so to speak, to a man having 10 clean women, 10 virgins, man. Why? Because a man's allowed to have multiple wives. He didn't say a woman having 10 husbands, because that's straight up wickedness. That's lewdness. That's outside of the temple. That's profane. That's wickedness, man. So this is Isaiah 3:12. It says, "As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them." Yeah, these women are ruling over us. Why? Because the so-called white man, represents Satan and the devil that the Bible speaks of, giving these women liberty to gather abroad, man. Give them so-called equal rights, equal opportunities, and all of that. Now you got even women enlisting in the armies and shit like that, police and all these different things, thinking they can do the job like men can do, and it's totally inadequate, man. It doesn't even make sense. Women ain't built for no military, built to be in no war type scenarios or, be in any type of combat situation, man. These women are built to, take orders and be ruled over by their husbands, man. That's what the whole point of Eve was being created in the first place, to be a helpmeet unto Adam, and the woman was created for the man, not the man for the woman. So this is straight up insubordination right here. This is an act of treason right here, man. You know, a woman ruling over a man. That's straight up wickedness. It's disorderly, and it's profane. It says, and women shall rule over them. Women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and they and destroy the way of thy paths. Yeah, and Esau is the one that set these women up to think that they could be equal to a man or above a man. You know, which is straight up BS, man. You know, and this is why, you know, the Lord is gonna turn things right side up. When all hell breaks loose, these women are gonna be humbled. They're gonna have to eat that humble pie, let go of their ego and that haughtiness, that proud spirit, and be underneath their man once again, be subject unto their husbands, man. Because as I said, a woman, when you get her for wife, you get her for possession. And anyone that tries to, you know, tamper with that is basically like the act of theft. It's stealing another man's property, man. And that's the act of adultery. So that's going to be prohibited. So a man can have multiple wives, but a woman's not allowed to have multiple husbands. That's straight up wickedness, man, on all levels. And the Lord doesn't take kindly to the transgression of adultery, man. He hates it. He despises it. You know, that's why a person is supposed to be put to death straight away. Them and the companion involved, whether there was this, you know, if they were gone along with the situation, or, you know, willingly, or, you know, and the woman didn't scream out or whatever, then both the victim and the victee are supposed to be put to death. But if the man grabbed the woman and he forced it upon her for basically grape, and she screamed out, you know, for help, then the only person that would die is the attacker, basically, you know, the antagonizer. You know, the man, basically, he would be put to death because the woman screamed out for help because she wasn't with it. But nowadays, these women are with adultery, man. You see all the videos, countless videos, TikToks and all that, women talking about how many partners they got, how many bodies they've got. You know, they call it bodies, man, because they be sleeping with a lot of dead souls out here, man. You know, mingling spirits and semen and all that in their body. It's like dead sperm cells and all that. That's mingled in their bodies, man. So they be catching bodies out here for real. And they're boasting and bragging about it, how many bodies they can get from a young age, you know. So this place is nasty, man, you know. And this is why the Lord needs to come back, and he said he's gonna destroy this adulterous and wicked generation. So yeah, man. So let me read the next precept. So these women are gonna be humbled anyway. Jeremiah 31:22. How long will thou go about, or thou backsliding daughter? For the Lord have created a new thing in the earth. A woman shall compass a man. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, man. All through the act of feminism, it's totally destroyed the you know, the setup and the foundations of a man ruling over his household, and a woman taking orders from a man. She being like a second class citizen, basically, and be under rulership, man. Be under his guard, under his rulership. And him telling her what to do instead of her telling him what to do, you know. And nowadays everything's you know, totally backwards. You got women controlling the finances. She's telling the man what he can and can't do. You know, the husband and all that, he's stressed out to the core. You know, and on top of that, women don't even want to cook and clean no more. It's just straight up madness, man. And then they be cheating on their husbands at the same time and complaining because they're bored, you know, making all excuses under the sun, except for the fact that they're just you know, they're just a harlot, you know, and that they're loose balling out here. She wipe off her mouth and act like she's done nothing wrong, as it tells you in the book of Proverbs, man. So this is the spirit on the earth right now. That's why the Lord said this is a wicked and adulterous generation, you know. But as I said, you know, the Lord is gonna humble these heifers out here. A lot of these heifers ain't gonna make it in these last days, and the ones that do, they're gonna be under the rule of their husbands, man. They're gonna be more than willing to take orders and to please their husbands by any means necessary, man. You know, and be what they was created for. Be a helpmeet, be a helpmate, a maid to help serve her husband. That's what the word woman means, to be a female servant. You know, but right now they're serving the enemy, man, which is a so-called white man. So a woman shall compass a man. which is straight insubordination, man. That's that's compared to being like an act of treason, you know. And these women are gonna catch hell in the time of Jacob's trouble, man, which you're currently in, which is gonna escalate. These women are gonna lament for the teats, and they're gonna come to find out that the man is the prize, and they're not the prize, man. They're not they're the one that's more precious than fine gold. It's the man that is. So Isaiah 32:2. It says, a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind. Yeah, from when all hell breaks loose. A man's gonna be their help and support. They're gonna be the security that they need, the protection in these last days. So man ain't gonna go to a woman for protection. The woman's gonna be looking for a man, an Israelite man at that, the man of the Lord, especially for protection in these last days. This is in a covert from the tempest. Yeah, covering, man. It says, and as rivers in the water in a dry place, as a shadow of a great rock in a weary land. See, so they're gonna realize that they can't help themselves. They need a man to come and help and support them, and they're willing to do anything that the man tells them to do to stay in his good graces, so to speak, stay in his good books, even if they have to be a second or third or fourth wife, fifth wife, even up to the 10th wife, man. As many as a man can have, and as many as a man can carry and deal with in these last days, because it tells you, Isaiah 4:1, which I'm going to read, 7 women, which is a complete number of women. Could be more than 7, Could be less than 7, but it's going to be a complete number either way for the men of the Lord, and these women are going to be more than willing to be their husband, to be the man's wife. Only let us be called by thy name. To bear his seed, to bear his children. And they don't mind sharing, basically, because that's what you call a high valued man. In these last days, you're going to see that the real high valued men are the men of the Lord, man. The ones that's got the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Because wisdom and knowledge is going to be the stability of our times and strength for salvation. So the only ones that's going to be stable and sober-minded in these last days when all hell's breaking loose is the men of the Lord, man. The ones that's got the Dawa, that spiritual exemption from judgment, the mark in their foreheads, which includes them having the names of Yahweh, Yahushai in their mouths, and they're going to be protected, man. And these women are going to cleave onto those men like magnets, man, if they're chosen. At the end of the day, because as I said, the man's going to have the pick of the litter. But a man is, it's a righteous thing for a man to have multiple wives. As I said last night, or at the live camp and all that, yesterday, situation with King Saul, when he had many sons and daughters, but he only had one wife, man. He only had one wife, and that's that spirit of monogamy. We see that today in Israel with some of these Israelite camps, especially at the IUIC. The ICPK, they deal with multiple wives, because you got Captain Tazariak, I think he has like 4, and there's nothing wrong with that, because they're all, his wives, man. They belong unto him. They're not married or betrothed to any other, so they're all bearing his seed, and they're doing their job as being wives, housewives, and all of that. So they're his property, man. So he's married 4 of them, so called, and obviously that having more than one wife is illegal in the West, but on paper it's illegal. But as long as you don't do the registry proceedings and all that stuff, signing to the government and shit like that, which you can only do with one wife, he's in the clear. As long as those women are happy to be with that man, they made made that contract, consummated the marriage and all that by having sex, then that man becomes his that woman becomes his wife, and vice versa, man. So that's righteous in the eyes of the Lord. The man's allowed to have multiple wives, but in the IUIC, regarding like Bishop Nate, he's always pushing this one man, one wife and all that. Similar to King Saul, that King Saul type spirit, man. When King David, he had multiple wives. He dealt with concubines. He didn't just have one wife. He had many sons, and he had many wives. So and he dealt with the other nations too. He had a lot of concubines. He dealt with Edomites, all of that. This is King David. So like, this is why the house of David, the tabernacles of David, is being revived as we speak, man. It's not the house of Saul. Because if he was under the spirit of the house of Saul, it would probably be that monogamous type spirit like Bishop Nate in the IUIC of saying only man or one man can have one wife and all that, which is just madness. That's not, you can't be fruitful and multiply with just one woman, man. She's gonna wear her ass out. How you gonna replenish and bring back the seed, the 2/3 and that, if you can only have one wife in the kingdom, man? It doesn't make no damn sense. So, the Lord chose the right king at the end of the day. a better king, which is King David, man, and he's coming back. That's the same king that went into captivity with us, which the IUIC also failed to answer when it was questioned on who the king was in Deuteronomy the 20th chapter that went into slavery. It was King David. We know him today as King Marshall in the reincarnation. We know he was Moses, and he was King David, and he was Peter, Apostle Peter, man. The rock that the Lord set up the church on. And he was also Jacob in the spirit. If you can, if you have eyes to see, if you have spiritual eyes to see and hear, spiritual eye salve, and if you can hear it, he was those great men in the reincarnation, man, and he's coming back as King David in the Lord when the Lord returns, man, when Yahushua returns, because it's the house of David's kingdom that's going to rule upon the earth, so beautiful times ahead. So now we're just suffering under this damn devil Esau Edom, the so-called white man, and his monogamous, pit relationship dogma, which is basically this modern day slavery for the man, to be stuck with one woman and not being able to spread your seed far and wide. That's just modern day slavery, man. So anyway, I think I read Isaiah 32 and the main points. But these women are going to be humbled, as you read from verse 9 on down. Talks to rise up, you women that are at ease. Hear my voice, you careless daughter. Give ear unto my speech. Because in these days, many days and years shall you be troubled. Jacob's trouble is going to take hold of these women, because they've been enjoying themselves too much. She that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. Says, ye careless women, for the vintage shall fail, and the gathering shall not come. So it's going to be hard times coming for you women out here in these last days. So that little Faustian bargain he made with the serpent it's falling short. It's about the devil's about to renege on that contract he made with you in the garden, man, as the serpent. He's gonna renege on you, man, and he's gonna leave you out there hanging to dry. So that's when you women are gonna be suffering the most, because as I said, you women are defenseless when you ain't got a man to defend you, man. And that includes the emergency services, because who usually comes out, whether it's the police or ambulance emergency services, when a woman needs help, fire squad or whatever it is, it's usually a man, a group of men. Security, it's usually the man. Police, it's usually the man. So the man's not going to be coming to respond to your needs in these last days. So you women are going to be helpless. Then you're going to come and run in to find the men of the Lord, as it tells you in Isaiah 4:1. A remnant prepared, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. So you're going to be catching untimely hell, and you're going to realize that you need a man to protect you. You don't just want a man, but you need a man, because you're helpless and defenseless without a man, especially an Israelite man, a man of the Lord. So this is the time we're coming into. So Akon wasn't too far from the truth, man. And this is what the West do. They promote lasciviousness and adulterous type behavior, because they don't they say they're God-fearing Christians and all that, but really they're a bunch of Satanists, man. And it starts from the head. Your guy Trump, the false anointed Trump, proclaiming to be the savior of the West, but really is an angel. He's a Satan transformed into an angel of light, man. That's exactly what he is. He's the devil incarnated, the great deceiver, true antichrist amongst many other antichrists out here. They don't believe in Yahweh Hashem Yahushua or the God of the Bible. It says rapper Akon breaks down why he believes women cannot have multiple partners Yeah, because ultimately it spreads forth disease, and you know, it spreads forth wickedness, man. You know, lewdness and sin against the Lord, transgression against the Lord, which is adultery, physical adultery, man. It says, but a man can say it's only twisted. It says, but a man can, so a man can have multiple women. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's worldwide known. That's been happening since the beginning of time. You know, it says it's only twisted in America, here in the West. You know, where women feel like they're equal to men. It's just total bullshit, man. You go anywhere outside of the West, even with the passport bros, and you can see that women play their position. Women know their role, basically. So Eve's gonna have to learn to know her role and shut her damn mouth, man, in these last days, man. Like The Rock used to say, know your role and shut your damn mouth. That's the woman's gonna have to learn that. Because you ain't equal to no man, and you definitely ain't above no man. You know, you're below, you're from beneath, you know. So, yeah, it's gonna be reiterated and recognized in this earth, man, especially in these last days. So, you know, yeah, the man's time's coming up. You women are going back down where you belong, man. So anyway, with that, I want to close out. Give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachach Dash, and Shalom to the hopeful and sincere elect.